CD Projekt Red canceled Cyberpunk's AAA multiplayer experience, the game I was looking forward to the most. And there's a bunch of confusion out there about it, about how people think it's still happening.
So they said that our next AAA, so they said previously we hinted that our next AAA would be a multiplayer Cyberpunk game. We've decided to reconsider this plan given our new, more systematic and agile approach. Instead of primarily focusing on one big online experience or game, we're focusing on bringing online into all of our franchises one day.
One day.
One day. Anytime an executive says, "But we have decided to reconsider this," means it's fucking canceled. Okay?
It's
and I don't know how
absolutely
people
canceled.
in the comments are like saying that this isn't canceled. That was very, very clear to me that Cyberpunk multiplayer online is canceled. It's gone.
It's
done.
absolutely 100% canceled. As a former executive who spoke executive speak all the time, executives never say anything is canceled. That's bad for them. That means that they get fired. It means that they made a bad decision at some point. Executives don't cancel things. They reconsider. They retool. They come up with a new plan. They become more agile. They use things like that to basically say, we messed up, and now we are changing our plan to do a different plan because our original plan was not the right plan. And that's exactly what happened here with this title. So what does this mean now for Cyberpunk 2077 multiplayer? It doesn't mean that online is dead altogether for the franchise. It just means it's taking a different form, but it is not going to be a AAA game. Before we cover exactly what it's going to become, I want to ask you guys and go around the table here. Do you agree with this decision to cancel the AAA version of the game and to focus on single player and to do this longer term online strategy? Or do you think this is a huge mistake? Starting with Perrin, do you think that they are screwing this thing up?
I mean, I don't think they could complete it. Like if they were going to continue to try to do Cyberpunk multiplayer online, they were going to fail. They didn't have any choice but to go down this route and to cancel it, in my opinion. I mean, looking at what happened with Cyberpunk, the single player game, clearly they don't have what it takes to do this next thing. And also, he's kind of saying in this presentation that their thing is AAA story-driven single player games. So for them to undertake this whole new multiplayer online experience would be a huge deviation in a new direction for the company as a whole. And this is a presentation designed very much for their shareholders as well. And what they're basically saying is we're sticking to our roots. The online component, the tech part, is going to be with GOG. It's basically going to be linking all of our games together with online components like Steam or Origin. And that's the route that they're going to go with this. And honestly, from a business perspective, that does make more sense to them as a business and for the shareholders because they're making money there. And that's a part that's working. The other part is really, really risky, and I guarantee you no shareholder wants to jump on board a Cyberpunk multiplayer online game after what just happened. So they didn't have any choice but to go this route after that failure.
Ross, do you agree or disagree with the decision to cancel the AAA Cyberpunk multiplayer game?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with it, but that doesn't mean I like it. I would have loved to have seen some multiplayer go down in this universe. What throws me off and what I think really helps make the decision an easy yes is based on the statements that they made yesterday about they don't even know when they're going to be back on the PlayStation Store. How are you going to develop multiplayer, online multiplayer, which was going to be almost an entirely separate game? How are you going to do that when you don't even have confirmation that the biggest console store is going to let you put their game on their platform? So I think that made the decision a lot easier for them. With that said, with everything else and this is kind of sidetracked, everything else they talked about, like I'm really excited to see what they do with the IP in the future, because just because Cyberpunk Online isn't going to happen doesn't mean that they don't have huge plans for this IP.
Makes sense. And let's read a couple comments here from chat. Rio Jackson says they might want to sneak it in as a feature in the next game update path and potentially gauge user sentiment. That could be the nail in the coffin. Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually what they've talked about doing. When they're talking about this longer term plan for the game, instead of developing a separate multiplayer game just for Cyberpunk, completely separate from the Witcher franchise. The idea is that they're going to develop technology, multiplayer technology, that will work for both the Witcher franchise and the Cyberpunk franchise at the same time. And so instead of just making one standalone game and hoping it's going to be a big success and doing a marketing campaign and a hype campaign and hoping to launch that thing, they realized that that ship has sailed because they blew all of their goodwill with their community with the botched launch of Cyberpunk 2077. So for that reason, I can start to agree with their decision here. I can understand that they, being able to take this and go to market and be successful with it is going to be difficult for them. What I do not agree with, I thought that Cyberpunk 2077 multiplayer was going to be the ultimate cash cow for CD Projekt Red. If they were able to develop something that is like GTA Online, and we've talked about this before, something that has all the cars, all the skins, all the chrome, all the everything you could ever want to buy, microtransactions, instead of a battle pass, it's a cyber pass, you have the mobile game integration, etc. It was going to be a mega ultra cash cow for them. Adding PvP, having this be a 5 to 10 year timeline with this multiplayer experience. I thought that this was going to be something that was going to carry their company financially in the long term. And so from a financial standpoint, I'm actually shocked. I'm totally shocked that they canceled the AAA title and they've decided to push that multiplayer GTA Online cash cow down the road. Let's talk about what those implications mean and what we think the multiplayer experience will be like right after this ad.
This podcast is sponsored by Restream. Why live stream to one platform when you can simultaneously live stream to every platform to discover new audiences faster using Restream.io?
Yeah, so let's get back to that then. So since we know that they canceled the AAA version of this game, Perrin, they did in the video at about 15:58, somewhere in this strategic video, show exactly everything that they are planning on releasing for all of these franchises on the screen. I want to show that to everybody here so they understand everything that's happening with these franchises. There's so much misinformation out there. People have all the wrong ideas. Here it is, and you can zoom in, and this actually builds out even further below this. Let's break this down. Break this down for us here, Perrin. They are literally showing us everything that's going to happen with this franchise. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so for those of you listening and not able to see the screen, this is a slide called Building Broader Franchises Based on Our Core. And they're categorizing them by what's available now, what's in the pipeline, and what's a long-term consideration. And they're saying in The Witcher, available now, single-player game. In the pipeline, next-gen, so next-gen consoles for The Witcher. Expansions, online experience, and mobile are already available now is what they're saying. And then Cyberpunk, they have single-player game available now, next-gen in the pipeline, expansions in the pipeline, online experience in the pipeline, and mobile long-term consideration. So they're just saying that everything for Cyberpunk, next-gen, expansions, online experience are all in the pipeline, and that's part of their core that they're working on, at least according to this slide.
According to this slide. So what does that online experience look like? I think that they are planning on stripping it down and reducing it significantly, potentially to like just a co-op experience here, something like that. Maybe adding in some PvP elements, maybe way down the road, maybe 5-10 years from now. But it looks like it's probably just going to be a co-op thing. Maybe there's going to be some racing. And that's about it. Like, I don't think that they are planning on doing an online experience that is massive, that is super ambitious based on what we're seeing here. What they kept saying in this strategic presentation with the Witcher franchise and with Cyberpunk is that they are focusing on single player experiences. And then basically they want to build these things around the single player experience to make money. The Netflix show, the expansions, the mobile games, licensing the stuff out to merchandise it around the world, and at no point did they emphasize how their online experience is going to be the big cash cow for them, the microtransactions, etc. It seems like they did a complete 180 here. I was celebrating. I thought it was such a smart decision to take the Cyberpunk IP and to turn that into a GTA Online experience. I thought it could have been one of the most lucrative franchises ever for them, but they've just decided to stick with their core business model. And as far as streamers and as far as creators are concerned, I think that this makes this franchise way less viable long term if they are not going to have a GTA Online style experience. What are your thoughts on that, Ross?
How viable was it already? I mean, after the botched launch, like I said, not being on the PlayStation Store, I mean, I don't know how much the IP, there's a lot to cover there. But when we had no details to begin with about multiplayer. I don't know. There was some stuff to cover, but now there's just not a lot if you're a content creator. It doesn't seem like it's worth investing your time into it now, because CD Projekt Red clearly has a vision for what they're going to do with this game. And by the way, I respect the hell out of them coming out and making these announcements and completely changing essentially their entire day-to-day workflow. CD Projekt Red did exactly what they needed to do to come out on top of this, maybe a little late, but after 2 months, they come out and they announce that, hey, we understand that we've made a lot of mistakes. Here's what we're going to do to try to fix this, to make sure these mistakes don't happen in the future. That's what you want from a studio. That's what happens when leadership steps up. So while there is a lot for content creators to cover as far as the direct IP, I don't know that now is the time. I think that content creators should start looking elsewhere, because while, like I said, while they have a vision, they haven't clearly communicated what their vision is for that IP yet. They're making it very clear that the Cyberpunk IP is not going away, but until you get more information about what's going on, I think the hype is kind of dead until then.
Wow, he thinks the hype is dead. Do you agree with that? I mean, from a content creator and a streamer standpoint, do you feel that there's nothing on the bone here to cover? What do you think, Perrin?
I mean, obviously we're covering it. So there's stuff to cover because it's dramatic right now from a business perspective, but from a game perspective, without having multiplayer, I don't think there's much. I mean, The Witcher, it was such a good game. You can cover it long term. It has long term viability because it's held as such a quality game through and through. Cyberpunk's just never going to have that. I want to go back here again, though, to this slide that, as I'm looking at it more, this building broader franchises based on our core. Okay, notice at the top they use the word core, and notice on the left they say core, and they have this line over here encompassing everything that's here. Notice they're using that terminology a lot because this was meant for shareholders to look at, and they want them to know that CD Projekt Red is focusing on their core. They're not going multiplayer because that's not their core. Single player is their core. The other thing I want you to look at, online experience for The Witcher is available now. What is that, guys? Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is, honestly. I haven't really checked that out at all.
It's just connectivity with GOG. That's it. Okay.
Ooh, my gosh. Oh my God, you're so right.
As far as I know, that's it. I haven't played it in a while, so I could be missing some things here. But I really don't think that there's people in The Witcher suddenly queuing up with other Witchers and playing PvP multiplayer together. So when they're saying online experience, you guys are being pretty generous here and giving them the benefit of the doubt, like Cyberpunk might still have some stuff going on. I'm saying no. It's not going to have anything like that. When they say online experience in here, they're talking about just connectivity with GOG, so you can see when your other friends are playing games, or if they're playing Cyberpunk 2. You can't play Cyberpunk with them, but there is technically an online experience, and it's GOG. That's what I gained from watching this video, from this presentation, is they're doubling down on their core, and part of their core also is selling games on GOG. So that is what they mean here, but at least from what I'm taking, by online experience. And that blue check mark saying in the pipeline doesn't mean that they're working on Cyberpunk multiplayer features. It means they're working on a Cyberpunk online experience, which is clearly GOG from this presentation.
Wow, you're totally right. I didn't even realize that. I thought that we were looking at maybe some co-op gameplay. I thought we were maybe looking at a raid, maybe a PvP experience. Maybe they're going to throw races in there. But you know what? You could be wrong, but they have really backpedaled. They have really backpedaled here. They didn't say multiplayer in this. This is the strategic vision for the company they just laid out here. They didn't say multiplayer here on the slide. They said online experience. And they talked about GOG over and over and over again in this presentation, and they didn't talk about multiplayer. They didn't talk about PvP. They didn't talk about Battle Pass. They didn't talk about microtransactions. They didn't talk about raids. They didn't talk about a shared open world or any of those terminologies you see with AAA multiplayer games. They just talked about an online experience. I think you're right. I think they're hedging their bets here, and they're basically saying multiplayer is essentially going to be reduced to almost nothing. And maybe long term, they're looking at doing multiplayer. Ross, do you agree with that take? I mean, it looks like they're really backpedaling here, and we might not even see co-op missions. They aren't even promising that at this point.
I think I honestly I don't know how I feel about this, but like I kind of mentioned earlier, the fact that CD Projekt Red is really trying to get out ahead of it, I do appreciate that, and it actually, in some weird way, makes me trust them even more with what they're doing. Any time that you can come out and say, "Hey, we were wrong. Everything we did was wrong. How we presented this was wrong." They even talked about how the marketing was wrong for this and how they're changing up their entire marketing plan moving forward.
I'm excited. They did say that. Yeah, that's a really admirable. Talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I remember the changes that they stated there. Yeah. Do you remember some of the changes that they talked about?
They were going to be. From what I remember, just looking at the quote, they were going to be focusing more on smaller marketing.
Yes.
Campaigns, and essentially that means like smaller marketing campaigns that show for each individual console, just like, without really revealing too much, but showing that the game works. Is that what you took away from it as well?
Yeah, that's what I took away from it as well. And also CD Projekt Red said that they are not going to announce their games way out ahead of time and show a bunch of stuff like they did with Cyberpunk way out ahead of time to build expectations through the roof and then to ultimately not deliver on them. They said that they're going to market their games right before launch, is what they said. That's a marketing change across the board. So these multi-year hype campaigns with these vision trailers and all this crap, they said that they're moving away from that entirely as a marketing strategy as a company. And I am glad that they learned that lesson, because that E3 trailer set expectations through the roof for the franchise. And as we know, that turned out really, really poorly. And so now they have this flywheel strategy, which is a total execu speak here. And what this is basically trying to tell you is just another fancy graphic to show you that they're releasing the RPG game. They are going to basically sell 1 million copies, monetize the hell out of it with a TV series, music, merchandise, etc. And then they're going to throw down mobile games on top of it to just juice out these franchises and to make them popular culture franchises. That was one of the core values that CD Projekt Red said in the strategic presentation, is that they want these franchises to be popular culture. That's one of the top 3 objectives of the entire company, is to have these be popular culture franchises. And so by doing this insane merchandising where you're wearing the t-shirt, you're wearing the hat, your baby has on a onesie for The Witcher or Cyberpunk, and you've got the mobile game in your hand playing Pokemon Go to the polls, but in The Witcher and Cyberpunk, and you're playing the game on your console. They want these to be like lifestyle brands that transcend the entirety of our media landscape. You're playing it on Netflix as well. That's their vision for these franchises, with now the single player RPG being the center of that, not a multiplayer experience. Anything to add to that, Perrin?
That's exactly what I took. If anything, this kind of goes back to more emphasis being focused on the Cyberpunk single player game, which is good. That means it's more likely that they're actually going to fix that up. I know we did a video where we're saying they weren't going to do that, but after this presentation, it is more likely that they are going to, because they're doubling down on their roots. AAA single player RPGs. They create these new IPs, or they take an existing IP and they expand it into popular culture. If you look back at The Witcher, they want to redo that model. And that's what their shareholders want them to do too. With The Witcher, you started the first game, it was really, really niche. Not many people knew about it. The second game, same thing. But when you hit that third game blew up and became very, very big. So much so that it got a Netflix show that became mainstream popular culture. And in fact, it had a song in it that hit viral. The internet went viral on the internet, and now everyone knows what The Witcher is. And they want that for all of their IPs. They want to see if they can duplicate that. And honestly, from a business perspective, it would be smart to try. I think, because they had a smash success. They need to go back to the drawing board and figure out, what did we do during that process that made that work so well? Let's do that, and not this other direction that we started to go to that really, really failed really, really badly. So I'm glad that they're being self-reflective here, especially in this presentation. They're admitting their faults, which is good, and they're going back and doubling down on what was working before. I think that's the best decision, and I like the decisions from the executives here on that. I think that makes sense. I think their shareholders will like that too, and I think it makes the sense for their company as a whole to rebuild the trust with the consumers, which they've just broken with Cyberpunk 2077. So doubling back down on the single player games, yes, probably really, really good, especially for those who want Cyberpunk 2077 to be better. That doesn't mean they're going to like go crazy on the single player game, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think that means they're going to expand upon that IP in many different ways. And we'll see an anime series. We'll see all this other stuff coming out from that IP to continue to make it a household name. But multiplayer, nope, that's not on the agenda anymore.
It isn't, and they just pulled up a graph. I just noticed it, and it doubles down on what you talked about a moment ago, where they had online on top of the franchises up there, and what it said is it's enriching online communities, is what it said. It didn't say anything about multiplayer. It didn't say anything about playing together. It didn't say any of that. They're basically just saying, we will continue to develop GOG, and that's it. Ross, there's some sort of company that pays us money. And there's a question here in chat talking about Das Babu is saying, brother, I'm a gaming partner with Facebook, and my reach is going up and down on Facebook. Should I quit Facebook gaming? Can you guys please answer my question here? I feel like there's a solution for people that are frustrated with streaming to just one platform, and perhaps if they were streaming to multiple platforms, Ross, they could maybe grow somewhere else if the platform they're on is not working out that great. Is there a solution out there to help this Das Babu guy?
He should probably just quit. No, I'm kidding. Go to restream.io. Yeah, no, seriously, that was 100% a joke. Keep streaming to Facebook gaming. Stream to all the platforms. Just because your Facebook gaming is going down, number one, there's a bunch of different things you can do to increase your Facebook gaming reach. We have past videos on that. Perrin's an expert on that. But for now, one thing that you should absolutely do is use restream.io and start streaming to every single platform you can, and start trying to build up your audience on every single platform. That way, if Facebook gaming just happens to go away one day, then you've already got a built-up fan base, or at the very least a really good starting point on other platforms. The link in the comments right now is going to get you 30% off your first month, and we appreciate people using that link because that does help support the show, and we really, really do appreciate that. So yes, restream.io, stream to all the platforms. How many are we on right now? We're on like 5 different platforms right now, even Twitter we're broadcasting on, which is awesome. So yes, use restream.io. Don't quit Facebook gaming. Let's move on.
Let's move on. So let's do our final poll here for everybody. Should content creators, streamers, YouTubers, bloggers, social media folks, etc., cover the Cyberpunk franchise to grow their channel? And if so, in what capacity? And if not, why? Starting with you, Andrew Parent. Do you think there's an opportunity to grow here for our audience that tunes in to understand what's going on with the gaming industry? Can they grow off of this franchise, Cyberpunk 2077? Or was them eliminating multiplayer in this presentation basically the killing blow for creators to be able to capitalize on this game? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't see another game title coming down the pipeline for Cyberpunk. So in terms of building yourself out for that upcoming trend, I don't see viability there. Your only hope would be that they do have the success in terms of making Cyberpunk a household name. So you could try to pull off a similar scenario, like if you were covering The Witcher 3 when the Netflix series came out and the song became viral. There was a huge increased search during that time, and you could leverage that. So you could cover Cyberpunk long time, basically catering to the niche community there and growing a little bit off of that and hoping for those future scenarios. I don't know though. I feel like there's better options out there. I do think you could still cover it even without another game on the horizon though. I do think it's because it's niche and because CG Project Red is going to be talked about a lot and the next couple of months too. I think as a content creator, you could cover it even without multiplayer.
Ross, thoughts?
Maybe. Listen, if you're creative enough, you can make anything work. I truly believe that. But I think what Perrin just said is probably the truth. Sure, you could start covering it right now. I think your growth is probably going to be pretty minimal, but that could get you out ahead in the community for when they do announce something new in the future, whether it be because they talked about in their presentation, talked about doing something live action, which I'm sure will be a movie, and they have an anime coming out. So there's going to be stuff that you can cover. I do imagine the growth will be slow, though, and at the very least until we know exactly what they're planning to do with the IP. So if you're up for a challenge and you don't mind very slow growth for quite a while, then go for it. If it's something you're passionate about, go for it. You never know. You may find some luck, but I wouldn't hedge my bets.
My opinion, I understand what you guys are saying. I think that there is a lot of meat on the bone here for Cyberpunk 2077 in a couple capacities. So number one, you could make a channel that's only about upcoming Cyberpunk 2077 news. So it can't just be about the games now. It has to be about the entire franchise. So you talking about fan art, you talking about cosplays, you talking about the upcoming comics, you talking about the upcoming merchandise, the upcoming show, the upcoming patches, and just what's coming up in the mobile game, etc., and what's coming up in the entire franchise as a pop culture franchise. That is something that can be covered in an upcoming and news capacity, number one. Number two, modding for Cyberpunk 2077 is a very viable trend that can be covered infinitely for the actual game itself. However, the modding community is very young right now, so it's going to take another 6, 9, 12 months for the mods to really build out and for there to be insane and super interesting mods for the game. But that is a viable trend. Those are the only two that I can see. The third one, the last one there, is going to be role-playing. And the problem is there's no opportunity for role-playing with other people right now, unfortunately, because there's no multiplayer online experience, and they don't plan to have one. So the role-playing element of it longer term is probably not that viable. So upcoming as a pop culture trend and news, and then modding. Those are the only two ways I think content creators can cover this game. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We really appreciate it. This was a shocking turn of events. For us, we were going to do an episode on why we think they should maybe cancel Cyberpunk online multiplayer today. That was the actual original video concept for today, and it turns out they canceled it the day before we were going to do this episode. So we kind of agree with this move overall. Personally, I'm massively disappointed. This was the number one game that I was looking forward to. I wanted Cyberpunk multiplayer more than any other game. I wanted to spend hundreds and thousands more hours in this universe, and they're not going to give me that opportunity, which really sucks. But hey, that's the industry, and that's why you tune into the Digital Drop Podcast, is because we bring it to you as soon as it happens. See you in the next episode, everybody. Adios, creators. Cyberpunk's dead. What can we say? Bye.